Diciamo niente su Alessandro, che non sta bene. Sì. Ok, scusa, una cosa. No, non anche gli occhiali, sono vecchi. No, ci credo, non è vero. Devi fare come ho fatto io, la sostituzione della cataratta. Ci vedevo un file. Sì, ci vedevo un file. Uno più valente mi ha detto, vedo fino a Milano, ti dico che fa a Milano. Addirittura? Sì, e blocca la presbiopia. Sì. Non l'ho desiderato fare, però si era opacizzato il cristallino, a quel punto ti sistemano tutti i difetti che avevi. No, è una figata. Sì, io ho avuto tutta la vita, ho buttato via, cerchiamo per leggere la sera. Però, sei proprio cristallino. Io ho dovuto buttarlo via, però. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. My name is Matteo di Castelnuovo, and I'm the president of the Italian Association of Energy Economics. I'm particularly happy to welcome all of you today at the opening of this annual event of the Italian Association for Energy Economics, which we decided for this year to move to another location. When I mean another, it means that usually we would organize these kind of events either in Milan or Rome for reasons which may sound too obvious, but we also realized that there are some amazing locations, amazing universities throughout our country, and we thought it would be about time to reach out to them and also to bring the sort of state-of-the-art of research in energy economics and share this experience with our associates and the people who pretty much share our passion. So that's why we are particularly happy and grateful that the University of Padua has decided to accept our invitation, and so they welcome us. And so, as you can see from this Aula Magna, this is pretty fabulous place, and we're very honored and happy to be in such a location. As you know, the rest of the session also will be organized in another building, but we will still be part of the University of Padua until Saturday morning. Now, without further ado, because we have several guests this afternoon to cover, so without further ado, once again, thank you all of you for showing up today, for coming to the conference, and allow me now to hand over the mic to Professor Dughiero, who is the, sorry, I forgot the title. Director. I'm getting on. Director of the Industrial Engineering Department. Thank you, Fabrizio, for being with us today.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear esteemed colleagues and energy experts, it's a great honor on behalf of the Rector to welcome you to Padua, a city that proudly boasts nearly 8 centuries of academic history, thanks to its university founded in 1222. Today, we gather in the prestigious Aula Magna of Palazzo Bo, where Galileo Galilei himself taught for 18 years. A fitting venue to reflect on the critical challenges of our time, including energy security and the transition to a sustainable future. We live in a period of profound transformations and global uncertainties. Geopolitical events, such as the conflict in Ukraine, have starkly highlighted the fragility of our energy systems. At the same time, we face an even greater challenge, climate change. The energy transition is no longer an option. It is a necessity, a pathway we must take to build a resilient and a sustainable energy system. To address these challenges, we must accelerate the adoption of renewable energy sources, promote the rational use of energy, and enhance efficiency in industrial processes. Electrification across multiple sectors, from mobility to production, represents one of the most promising strategies to reduce CO2 emissions and strengthen energy security. As highlighted in the Draghi report, Europe faces a dual challenge: maintaining its competitiveness while embracing decarbonization. This requires a coherent and ambitious strategy that integrates energy production with industries driving the transition, such as clean technology, and the automotive sector. The report emphasizes that decarbonization is not only vital for our planet, but can also be a catalyst for European growth if we align our policies with this vision. Decarbonization could become an opportunity for Europe to pass from made in Europe manufacturing to made in science, where the contribution of universities is mandatory. The creation of new startups in the field of energy transition could become a new booster for European economy. While global electricity demand is rising exponentially, renewable energies are taking center stage. Yet, as the Draghi report underlines, Europe's energy prices, currently 2 to 3 times higher than in USA, risk undermining our industrial competitiveness if we fail to address structural inefficiencies and transfer the benefits of clean energy to consumers. As a university, and in particular as a Department of Industrial Engineering, we are deeply committed to advancing this transition. Through research and technological innovation, we are working to develop solutions that support decarbonization and electrification. The Levi Casas Center, there is the director here, Paolo Mattavelli, based here at the University of Padua, serves as a hub for advanced energy research and innovation. Padua is not just an historical city. It is a living laboratory of ideas, a bridge between tradition and innovation. And it is precisely in this context that the dialogue, exchange, and the collaboration among experts like you are essential to finding common solutions to the challenges ahead. I would like to conclude my welcome address with a call to action. Today, more than ever, we must unite to accelerate the transition. It is a complex but not impossible task. Success requires the contribution of all, institutions, businesses, academia, and most importantly, civil society. As highlighted in the Draghi report, Europe must also ensure that its democratically elected institutions lead this dialogue, creating policies that are both ambitious and inclusive. Universities, in particular, must serve as engines of collaboration between academia and industry, fostering concrete, science-based actions. Policymakers must embrace these actions decisively, without hesitation, if we are to meet the ambitious goals of the energy transition. I wish you all a fruitful and stimulating exchange during these days of work. I am confident that each of your contributions will enrich this discussion and help pave the way toward a safer, more sustainable energy future. Welcome to University of Padua and to the city of Padua, and don't forget to enjoy our history, cultural heritage, and our spirits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Thank you also for the last wish about enjoying, because obviously academia research is also about enjoying the surroundings. Sometimes we forget, we go around conferences, we forget sometimes the best part of it. Now, I would like now to leave the floor to Professor Arturo Lorenzoni, who's an established professor here at University of Padua. He's also the chair of the scientific committee of this conference, so Arturo is entirely your responsibility, how things will go from this point onwards. I'm joking. And above all, is also, I'm glad also to say that Arturo happens to be also a good friend of mine. So Arturo, thank you very much once again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matteo, and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome in Padua. I'm very happy that this year, this conference is in Padua, because we had Milan, Rome, and this is, I mean, not so nice. So having Padua breaking this long-lasting habit, I think is a good thing. So really happy you are here. And I hope it becomes a new habit, Padua and Milan, Padua and Rome, and whatever. So you are welcome now, and you are welcome also in the future. I want to thank Professor Paolo Mattavelli, which is the director of the Center for Energy Studies Levi Cases, and the former director also, which is Professor Bertucco, that I see here in the room. And this is a center for the study of the technical and economic aspects of the energy sector, who started in the 70s. 1972 is the foundation of this center from the money left by Professor Giorgio Levicasis, who was the CEO of ACEA in Rome. And he understood, even before the first oil shock, that energy was crucial. And so we have the opportunity to keep on studying these topics thanks to his support. So thank you, Paolo, because the support of the center is essential. But I'm very honored to be the chair of the scientific committee. When Matteo was asking me, I said, absolutely yes, it's really an honor. And so I think that the association is really powering the energy policies all over Europe. I mean, we are member of the European Energy Economists Association, and I see also colleagues from other states, and I see how strong is the influence of what we are seeing here in the European policies. And so I think it is important to keep on producing food for thoughts for the international and national policies. And as far as I could see from the papers which have been submitted, I see that we have plenty of work to do and plenty of ideas to leave to our policy makers and our public decision makers. So thanks to all of you who have submitted papers. This is the strength of the association, and I think that discussing among us of these topics is really, I mean, this is the beauty of our job, I think. So thank you for being here. Thank you for staying with the discussion. And yes, I mean, I think this is the best part of our, I mean, apart from working with the young students, which is a privilege, but the best part of our work is having the possibility to discuss in occasions like this. So, yeah, this is all from my side. And whatever you want to know about Padua, about the University of Padua, about what we are going to do in the next days, feel free to ask. So welcome.
Thank you, Arturo. Thank you very much, Arturo. And we'll say something more about the association later after the two speeches. But before I move on, I ask your cooperation maybe for one big round of applause, because, I mean, as for those of you who have organized an event, you know there is so much work going behind it. So there are several people. I'm just the not so pretty face in front of the organization, okay, but I'm certainly not the one who did the heavy lifting, okay? So there are several people who contributed to this event, starting from Arturo, sitting next to me, Carlo Di Primio sitting in the front line, Cecilia Camporeale, and above all, Anka Serbu. And everybody, if I'm forgetting somebody, please apologies, but thank you very much for making this possible. Can I have a big round of applause for all these people? Okay. Now, we are particularly happy because, I mean, Fabrizio, you mentioned several issues, no, that are actually currently under discussion, from the Draghi report, the Green Deal, the Europe and the decarbonization, and in a way to hear from the horse's mouth to some extent. We are lucky that today we have connected with us Mr. Alessandro Blasi, which is the special advisor to the International Energy Agency, okay, which is sort of kind of organization that we are all grateful in terms of the amount of information, Alessandro, and food for thought, also with your post on LinkedIn, Alessandro, that you always share with us and make us think. And sometimes we get a bit too worried, okay, about the future, but it's always, as Arturo mentioned, it's important that actually we talk to each other, we share research, experience, and thought. Now, without further ado, once again, Alessandro, thank you for being connected here with us. And by all means, the floor is yours, and I look forward to hearing your speech. Thank you, Alessandro.
Buongiorno, and thanks very much. Can you hear me? Just confirm, please. It works?
Yes, I think we can.
Okay, perfect.
We can see you and
now,
hear.
Well, now you will see something better, which is my slides. I think. I mean, I hope so. So please let me know if you see the slide and we move.
Yes, we can see them.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, Matteo, dear Professor Lorenzoni, Dughiero, thanks for the invitation. And thanks also to Mr. Bortoni to have channeled this invitation. It's my pleasure to be here virtually. I would have loved to be there in person and enjoy the beautiful venue, your company, as well as the spirits mentioned by Mr. Dughiero. But it was not possible. So what I'm trying to do now is trying to give a bit of overview, a bit of food of thoughts, as you mentioned, Matteo, in order to try to describe it, to share how we see the energy system, the global energy trends, where are we going, and some of the key challenges we have in front of us, including the very topic, very pertinent topic, if I may say, of your conference about energy security. So I believe that the starting point is to look where it was the energy system and where it is today. And a very important point in my view to remember is that what we are trying to change for the very much needed clean energy transition, as mentioned before, is something which is huge, is complex, is evolving, and is very much resilient to the traditional sources. For some that have the gray hair, like me, it might be familiar that almost 40 years ago, at the time it was 1987, the concept of sustainable development was introduced by a former prime minister, Madame Brundtland. And at that time, the share of global energy mix, the share of fossil fuel in global energy mix was about 80%. After almost 40 years, and the energy demand has grown a lot, we are still very close to a share of fossil fuel of 80%. And this tells us that fossil fuels are difficult to replace, are stubborn, and the task is not easy and doesn't require shortcuts. This is the first message. The second message is we have been seeing, looking at the media conference and the rest, a lot of encouraging news about renewables, clean energy, and so on. And this is true. It's excellent news. But when we look each year how much energy we add to the system, so the growth, we still see that the majority of the energy coming on top of what consumed before is still fossil fuel. So we need to be clear up front. This is a complex task, very much needed for climate change and for other reasons, but the energy system moves with certain time and with certain complexity. This is where we come from and where we are today. If we look ahead, and so we enter in the magic world of scenarios, something that the IEA we do a lot, we have a different outcomes. Of course, the scenario depends on the assumption you do for demography, for economics, for policies, for technology development, and so on. And as such, the scenario are trying to depict a trend, do not pretend to tell you the truth. So it's important to give the right role to the scenario. And what we see is something important, I believe, which is regardless of the scenario we are looking at, what we see is that we are at an historic inflection point. And basically is that the demand for fossil fuel, all fossil fuels, oil, gas, coal, is set to peak before the end of this decade and then start to decline. Again, we need to be clear. The peak demand is an important point. It marks an inflection point in the history of the world of energy, but this does not mean that we will get rid of fossil fuel the day after. There will be a decline. How fast would be this decline will depend from many factors, but we have to keep in mind that these sources will remain in the global energy mix, hopefully as less and less, but for some time in the future. Another way to look at the direction of travel, a very, I would say, telling way to look at the direction of travel is looking at the money. Because university is always a nice period of life, a romantic period of life, I would say, a very entertaining period of life. But it's also, there are some things that always remain valid, and it is that money matters. So when we look at the investment, the global investment budget, all fuels, all technologies, what we see is that today, this value is about $3 trillion each year. The flow of investment in the energy sector has been growing rapidly, and has moved in the last few years from a budget that has remained stable for quite a long period of around 2 billion to 2 trillion to 3 trillion. What is interesting to note is that this change has been fundamentally driven by one part of the global energy system, which is clean energy. And in particular, we have seen this coming from renewables, which are today in the power sector, the undisputed star, as well as grids, which too often has been forgotten, while in reality are the veins of the energy system, especially as our economy are electrifying. Now, if we enter a bit more into details, there are, let's say, two main pillars. One is the electricity or power generation side. And again, for those that have been looking at the energy sector for a bit of time, what we have always said is that coal is the king of the global power mix. And it's still true for many parts of the world. Coal is extremely important in electricity generation at the global level, but especially it is for places like China, for India, for Indonesia, so places where growing fast and population is pretty large. But when we look in terms of new capacity coming to the market, there is someone else which is not only the king, but I would say the king is the queen, is the prince, and also the entire royal family, and this is solar. Solar is not a romantic story anymore. Until 10 years ago, people was putting solar panels on the roof because they wanted to contribute to environmental sustainability. Today, solar is a business case in most parts of the world and dominates all the new power capacity installed in the world every year. If we look, we have solar that is bigger in 2023 and 2024 of all other sources all other technologies that are used to generate electricity putting together. Outside solar, we can see two macro trends. One is that investment in clean energy or low carbon energy, because we also include the nuclear, are increasing, while investment in fossil fuel for power generation are decreasing. I would like to put a footnote here, because as the system transitions more and more to a higher share of what we call variable renewables, like wind and solar, we need the flexibility in the system. Flexibility comes from demand response, comes from having more grids, more distribution, more interconnection, but comes also to have, for instance, battery storage, which is booming, but sometimes is not still at the level needed. So something that we are seeing in the data is also that as far as concerned, for instance, gas, when you look at the orders of the big giants of gas turbines, like Mitsubishi, like Siemens Energy, like GE Vernova, there is a quiet activity in the gas power generation side, which is an indication also of the need of more flexibility to keep the system in balance. The other leg of the investment is oil and gas. And what we see in the oil and gas is a few things. First of all, the level of investment, which was collapsed during the pandemic, when the oil demand and oil prices crashed, has been recovering and now are reaching the pre-pandemic level. What is interesting to see is not only the overall level of investment, but also how this investment has been changing. So from one side, we have the big international oil companies that have prioritized to give money back to shareholders or to repay debt, while investment from national oil companies, especially in Middle East and Asia, have been increasing. So the pandemic also marks a shift in the investment strategy. On this, I would like to make a footnote, especially for students, because I believe it's important, and is that a lot of attention in the international debate is towards the so-called majors. So Exxon, Chevron, Shell, BP, Eni, Total Energy, and so on. And this rightly so is good to look what these companies do, how they are sustainable or not, how they walk the talk, and so on. But keep in mind something, please, is that these companies owns only about 13%, 1/3 of the oil and gas reserves in the world. And they manage a similar share of the global oil and gas production. What does it mean this? It means that if we want an oil and gas sector involved in the clean energy transition, the elephant here are the national oil companies. And we need also not only to look at the majors, which is good, but also to the others. In this sense, the number that we have about all the sector in terms of their investment going to clean energy is pretty depressing, because it's only 4% of their total spend. Now, behind this 4%, there are companies that goes above 20, and there are companies that are at 0. But the sector as a whole can do more. Also because we are an inflection point as far as concern oil demand. Let's say in the last few years, we have seen oil demand increasing about 5 million barrels per day. And here, there was one big, sorry, I have to go back, I touched too quickly. One big actor, and is China. Almost of this growth came from China, and China for basically 2 reasons. One was petrochemicals, and the second, transport. But China economy is changing, less energy intensive, less heavy, let's say, and China is a world leader as far as concerned electrification of its transport. So what we are seeing is an important change in the way oil demand is going, and we are seeing that, as mentioned before, we are reaching a peak. Of course, as I mentioned, scenarios are not a perfect science. It can be a bit more, a bit less. And in this sense, we have made some sensitivity analysis to try to look what happens if electric vehicles sales go faster or go slower. And of course, this change a bit the trajectory, but fundamentally the message doesn't change, and the peak in oil demand is well on site. Now, I spoke of China. China is also something which is very peculiar, further on demand, further to be a champion in renewables, further to be basically leading in almost all energy sources and energy manufacturing. China is also a country that is in the lead as far as concerned electricity. And this electrification process is not only in the Asian giant, but is happening everywhere. If we look in the last, let's say, 15 years, we already had electricity demand growing twice faster than energy. But when we look ahead, this trend is only accelerating. We are going to see electricity demand growing 6 times faster than energy demand. So the world is electrifying. And this is happening more or less everywhere. It's happening in China, which of course remains a big giant. It is happening in countries where their demand is rising for population, economy improving. And important to note, we are seeing electricity demand start increasing again in advanced economy. It wasn't the case before, where, you know, our terawatt-hour consumers remained more or less stable in Japan, in Europe, in US, and so on. What is the reason of this? There are fundamentally 2 main reasons. One is that technology development is bringing electricity to enter into traditional sector. So we are electrifying, for instance, heat. We are electrifying, as I mentioned, transport, but also is coming from new sources of electricity demand, which can be, for example, heat pumps, of course, as electric vehicles for new demand generator, as well as data center and artificial intelligence. Now, and I'm going to approach the last part of the presentation is the topic of this conference about energy security. And in a very rapid transforming world, the concept of energy security does not go away. On the contrary, evolves and introduces a new dimension. And this despite, for instance, if we look at some of the traditional fuels, we are in a context of relatively comfort zone. So let's take oil. We have a level of spare capacity in OPEC, which basically is unprecedented. And we are going in that direction. There is a lot of growth of oil coming from shale, but especially coming from deep water, a sector which it was considered, I mean, almost dead only 4 years ago. If we take Guyana, if we take Brazil pre-salt, if we take the Gulf of Mexico, we have a lot of oil coming. And as far as OPEC countries, there is a lot of spare capacity. If we take gas, in the next few years, looking at all the projects around the world, we have that the global LNG capacity is going to increase by 50%. It's an enormous amount of new capacity of LNG coming to the market. And this will bring the level, looking at demand trend, the level of utilization rates going down, so giving comfort. But also, if we look, for instance, the part of, let's say, of clean energy. Solar PV, the panel cost has plunged significantly. This is due to a big overcapacity in the market, especially in China, and an overcapacity that is only going to improve. And the same as, to increase, the same as what it concerns battery. Does this mean that in this context of comfort markets, energy security goes away? In our view, is on the contrary. And why? For instance, if we take how much oil and gas goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is a very sensitive point related to geopolitical development in the area, all this comfort we are projecting, we are seeing disappear. Through the Strait of Hormuz, we have transiting every day about 20% of oil consumption and about 20% of LNG trading into the world. But the same is, for instance, when we consider the geographical concentration for the manufacturing of clean energy like solar or like batteries, where one single country, name and surname is China, has the vast majority of production. So the concept of energy security do not disappear, but the traditional remains and others comes on top of the traditional one. The last part that I would like to mention is something that Professor Dughiero mentioned before, and it is about the magic word of nowadays, which is competitiveness. And there is a new, very important market coming into the picture, and it's the market of clean energy technologies. When we look in our data, we take in consideration electric vehicles, solar panel, wind, electrolyzer, heat pumps, all these kind of things. Is a market that just a few years ago was worth $2 billion per year. But at that time, we had very low sales of heat pumps. We had one sale of electric vehicle every 100 new cars sold, and so on. This has changed. The numbers are much bigger today, and this market is 700 billion per year. And when we look at the future, we only see this growing and exceeding $2 trillion per year just in a 10 years time. Now, just to remain in the energy sector, $2 trillion per year is the equivalent value of all oil traded in the world nowadays. And this is going to be the same size as far as concerned clean energy technology. This opens up different things. It opens up that the country want to compete to have a piece of this cake, want to try to position themselves to develop what can be defined as the industry of the future, making energy policies not being anymore interconnected only with climate policies, but becoming very strictly aligned with industry policies as well as with trade policy. For anyone that is interested to follow the news, what is happening in Europe in the last days or months as far as concerns the car sector, or Northvolt declaring bankruptcies, or steel producer closing plant and so on. These are all important elements that will feed into the energy equation. Because when we look around the world, on one side we have the investment in clean energy manufacture is booming. On the other side, China is home of about 70% of this global manufacturing value. And looking at the different trade, because we want to look technology by technology, trade route by trade route, what we are seeing is that the concentration in the movement of this technology further to the value is concerning. I mentioned before, oil and gas 20% goes to one single trade, almost. In this case, we have that more than 50% of clean energy technology trade goes through another strait, which is the Strait of Malacca, with all the implication that any disruption there could bring to everybody in the system. To conclude, 4 messages to reflect for the young minds. The first one is bigger and bigger, which is what we are seeing is that the energy, which is a prerequisite for development, energy demand is keep growing. And what we are seeing is a lot of historic transformation, inflection points happening into the market. And this is going to have implications that goes well beyond the energy sector, but interacting with the economy, with geopolitics, and more. The second is what I would define the age of electrons. Electricity is becoming more and more relevant in our society, is entering sectors which were satisfied with different sources. There are new sectors calling for more electricity. So this means developing the infrastructure. This means making sure that we are able to accommodate the rising need that it comes from this part of the energy system. The third is down, but not out. We are seeing an historic peak in fossil fuel demand coming, but this doesn't mean that oil, gas, and coal will disappear the day after. We have to deal with them. We have to make the most out of it also in environmental terms, trying to minimize emission, trying to make the good use of them, but we cannot consider this kind of sources as gone and not serving the scope of the energy needs that the world is still calling for. And the last but not least is what I would say a new kid on the block, because as I mentioned, the emergence of this new global energy economy or an era of clean energy manufacturing is coming into the picture very quickly. Countries are competing for this. Look at the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, or look at the Net Zero Industry Act in Europe, but we can bring the same for production scheme in India, green transformation in Japan, other things in Korea. So all these kind of things will have an important implication as far as concern our society, our economy, as well as jobs. And with this, I would stop. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Alessandro. And Arturo, before your presentation, mentioned the word food for thought. You took that literally. We have food for thought for an entire year from all the sort of insights that you share with us. I think we have a million questions for you, but unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we'll have to leave it to some other time, Alessandro. But that was very, very valuable indeed. Rest assured that we will be talking about your presentation and your remarks throughout the rest of the conference until Saturday. Okay, very, very, very insightful indeed. Thank you very much, Alessandro. And until next time, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. And after Alessandro's presentation, we move to another agency, but this time the Renewable Energy Agency, so IRENA, and now we have a short presentation from the Director General, Francesco La Camera.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct pleasure to address you today at the 8th Italian Association of Energy Economists Symposium for Energy Security. Traditionally, energy security has been measured using the metric of fossil fuel supply. We at IRENA believe that it is an updated concept. Renewables, and only renewables, are the credible alternative for energy security. Earlier this year, IRENA published Geopolitics of Energy Transition, Energy Security. According to our analysis, the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix would increase from 16% in 2020 to 77% by 2050 in IRENA's 1.5 Celsius scenario. As a result, we are witnessing a period of profound transformation in the global landscape. First, there are significant geopolitical shifts reshaping the world. The lingering social and economic impacts of the pandemic have altered the global trade, sparking economic protectionism in some nations. Conflicts, sanctions, and supply chain disruption are not only affecting commodity prices, but also furthering energy inequality. Now, renewable energy, led by solar power, wind power, and other technologies, are advancing at an unprecedented pace, becoming central to the global energy system. Energy systems via renewables are increasingly electrified, digitized, and interconnected. What was once a costly and challenging concept, renewables are now seen as a cornerstone of energy sovereignty and security for nations around the world. For the record, 473 gigawatts of renewable capacity additions added in 2023, 81% or 382 gigawatts of this installation at lower cost than fossil fuel alternatives. In 2023, global average cost of electricity from solar PV fell by 12%, offshore wind and hydropower by 7%, concentrated solar power by 4%, and onshore wind fell by 3%. Furthermore, recent data of ARENA show that global renewable energy jobs reached 16.2 million in 2023, up from 3.7 million in 2022, indicating an 18% annual increase. The data shows that we are not selling a fantasy. It's crystal clear that the provision of renewables worldwide will enable countries to improve employment, grow sustainable industries, lower costs, reduce fossil fuel dependencies, improve socioeconomic conditions, and achieve energy security. However, the harsh reality is that we are not on track to meet the COP28 UAE consensus goals to triple installed renewable capacity and double the rate efficient or energy efficiency by 2030. Analysis from ARENA flagship publication, the World Energy Transition Outlook 2024, launched here at COP29, shows that the energy transition powered by renewables remain off track. Despite witnessing record installation of 473 gigawatts in 2023, reaching our global goal of 11.2 terawatts by 2030, required deploying approximately 1 terawatt, 1,050 gigawatts of installed renewable capacity every year for the next 6 years. To achieve this cumulative energy sector investment will reach $47 trillion by 2030, on an average of $6.7 trillion each year between 2024 and 2030. Moreover, progress remains geographically uneven. At our current pace, an estimated 606 million people in developed countries will remain without access to electricity, and 1.8 billion people without access to clean cooking. We cannot afford to continue widening the gap with more high-level announcements when they don't reflect actual country plan on the ground, both in terms of renewable capacity additions and investments. Countries cannot achieve energy security without drafting stringent policy frameworks, establish robust infrastructure, and develop technical capacity and skills. Infrastructure, policy, and skills development is only possible with support from international stakeholders and scale-up financing. Thus, I urge you economists here today to embrace technological innovation, strategic partnership, and investment-driven renewables development in this 8th edition of the Energy Symposium of your association. I am confident that this symposium will foster knowledge sharing and meaningful discussion as we explore energy security and aim to create a just, inclusive, and equitable world powered by renewables. Thank you. Thank you very much and good work.
Thank you to ARENA, Mr. La Camera. And can't help but wonder, I remembered when I first approached the sort of engaging with the Italian Association, that the annual symposium, I noticed that every year the title was about energy security, you know? Usually when you organize a conference, you change the title every year. And I thought, that's weird, why don't we change it every year? I think we got the answer cut out, okay? Because actually energy security is very much current and future challenges, and every year is still up there as a priority. So I think we can make peace with that. And so I can tell you, without the risk of being sort of wrong, that next year conference will have the word energy security in the title. Okay, I think we can settle for that. Now, before I set you free, obviously you are free to go, but allow me to just spend a few words about our association. Okay, so if I could please kindly ask to upload the slides. Thank you. So, as you know, so we are here as Italian Association, but also and at most for the International Association of Energy Economics, and I have the honor of being part of the IEE Council member representing our European affiliate leaders. And I'm saying this not because I'm trying to show off, I will do that later, at the coffee break, but simply because I'm asking about the things I'm going to share with you, that if you want to know more what the IEA does, if you want to engage more with the association, whether the Italian chapter or the international one, please reach out to me, okay? I'll be around and let's have a chat of something you're interested or you would like to do. For those of you who do not know, so the IAE does several things actually, and so yes, we do share information. We do provide, thanks to you, high quality research, and something which is particularly close to my heart, and I'm sure also Arturo and Fabrizio's heart, and most of us here, is actually education. And this is something which, if you ask me, is very relevant to what we just saw. The meaning that actually there are so many investments, the challenge is paramount. And I keep hearing from companies that they cannot find enough graduates, okay? They just don't find enough people to do the things that need to be done. So once again, we have the world cut out for us. We need to look into where, obviously I'm talking on behalf of economics, so where energy economics is taught across the university world, because clearly we have a massive gap and there is something we can do. How the IEE does these three things basically is through sharing the publication, which I will mention in a few seconds. We do organize international conference, more words about those in a second, and regional conference such as the one that you're attending today. And we very much strive to build networks about those of us in terms of a good mixture, if you ask me, of academics and professional. I think also today is a good example of that. And this is, if you ask me, this is very much one of the added value that this kind of association can provide. And certainly, I'm sure that there will be something will come out of this conference as usual. Next slide, please. So if you wonder how many members we have, so as you see the numbers on this slide, the overwhelming majority is actually in Europe. We probably should think about the fact, if you look at the big number, round number, you will notice that we have, it's a tiny number at the top, 20% of academics within the members. I think is a bit too low, okay? It has to be a mix, but 20% means academia probably should play, if you ask me, a greater role within the association in terms of membership. So there's a work that we need to do, and obviously as a council, we need to ask ourselves why that is. And also, and again, another important questions about the new generation, and we have 20% only of young members, and again, this is one of the objectives of our mandate, basically, okay, so to increase the numbers, but we certainly need your cooperation in that respect. And you can see the largest affiliates on the top, so obviously the US is kind of where we have the sort of the parent company, so to say. France, Germany, it's in Norway, United Kingdom and Austria. We're also expanding into others in terms of developing countries. So my message is watch this space in terms of what we are trying to do. Next slide, please. For those of you, well, if you're here, you're likely to already been a member, but you may want to reach out and maybe share this information with your colleagues. So you get the subscription to our 3 publications. You got access to the conference proceedings, participation working paper series, and reduced conference fees on scholarship. But I usually don't talk about conference fees because I fear for my life. So I'd rather skip the topic to maybe during the coffee break. No, I know it's always a contentious issue, so I don't think this is the place to discuss about those. And obviously, again, the networking is probably one of the best things that you can do within the association, so getting to know people. I do it myself, so I enjoy attending our events also for these particular reasons. And you can also tend to, also in terms of the Italian Association, we're organizing new activities with the intent, obviously, to attract and engage more with the younger students or young professionals through some of the things that you can see here, the happy hour, the poster session, the PhD day, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. We do have, as you know, as I mentioned before, 3 publications, 2 of which actually are peer-reviewed journals, which pretty high impact factor. We are aware that there have been in recent times some problems in terms of the timing of the publication that was due to a change in management, not our management, but in terms of the publishing company. But I'm confident that the problems have been sorted out, so to say. And so, by all means, please consider to submit to this very good journalism, really. And also, but there's also the more recent one, which is the Economics and Energy and Environmental Policy. And we have one of the architects, I'm not sure he's here today, Jean-Michel Glachan, probably will come tomorrow. He's one of the sort of drivers of the second publication. Slightly lower impact factor, but still a very decent one. And finally, we have also the forum. You will receive by email the invitation. We had the recent one on energy poverty. It's a good way also for everybody, whether a young researcher or a more established one, to put it out there without going through the peer review process or even a working paper, no? Maybe you have some of these, and usually also well-established research center publish these kind of things, whether it's a policy brief or the like. So please do consider contributing also to the Energy Forum. Next slide, please. Our next international, some of you, we met in Istanbul, okay? And last June, it was a very special occasion. And the next international one will be in Paris, as you can see, then New Orleans, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi. We also have, I can tell you from our council, we also have other countries already lined up, but I cannot disclose, okay? I sign a memorandum, no, I'm joking. I can tell you over the coffee break. So there are other locations set up basically until 2030. We're also looking to organize a conference in developing countries, okay? In other developing countries. So it is expanding, but rest assured that every year you will have the opportunity to meet your peers in some kind of location, international location, and exchange views. This has been established for a long time, and it will be so also for the foreseeable future. So see you in Paris after Padua. That's the message. And as an Italian association, we have been organizing a conference for a long time with the title Energy Security, as we said before. We usually sort of move for logistic reasons, okay, Milan, as I mentioned earlier, Milan, Rome, Milan, but I very much, as much as I welcome the invitation from La Camera to embrace those challenges, I also welcome Arturo's invitation to continue maybe with Padua and with other locations, so do let us know. But I mean, I wanted to stress out the fact that actually we've been doing this job for a while, and I'm proud also to say that we were able, one of the few who were able also to organize an event during the peak of the pandemic, which was, trust me, was not easy at all in those uncertain and troubled times. And it will continue to do so also in the coming years. Next, and I think we are closing to the end. So without further ado, thank you very much for your attention. Do reach out, okay, if you want to know more about the association, what we can do. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of things to discuss, no, Arturo, in the next one day, almost 2 days. And I very much, once again, thank you, University of Padua, Centro Levi Casses, and everybody else who made this possible. Thank you, Fabrizio, Arturo. Thank you, folks, for coming, and I wish you a wonderful, stimulating, and useful conference. Thank you. Yes, now we have the, sorry, I don't remember by heart the program. So we have the first dual plenary session. We need to go to the archival, and I'm sure there will be people who will be able to point out where to go. Okay, so this way. This way, okay.
One is here and the other is...
Okay.
Yeah, back.
No, grazie mille a te, grazie.
I think I can, yes, now it's working. So, welcome to our session on renewable energy, clean energy technologies, and critical raw materials. This is a very big theme, and it is very funny. I think our speakers are coming from electricity sector, so we will talk about electricity and not so much on other forms of electricity. And regarding the situation in electricity market, as we have seen just before from Alessandro, in principle, we should be somehow optimistic. The industry is working well. There is technology available, very good. These technologies, the production of these technologies is relatively cheap. The cheapest, as we have seen, 80% of the fossil fuel technologies are more expensive than the technologies for renewable energy. So we have competitive costs. And the markets are also developing. Wherever we are in the world, we see very large investments into renewable energy. And finally, we have also large public support. So somehow we have only to wait. We will see in 10 years, it will be automatically more renewable energy, and maybe the speed is not fast enough, but there is a speed which have never been seen before. For example, in photovoltaic, it calculated if we use the present technology of this year, the capacity of producing solar photovoltaic cells. And if these solar cells, which can be produced today, will be applied in the next 3 years, we will triple the generation of photovoltaic electricity in the next 3 years. So that is the target of the IRENA. Of course, there are other renewable energy, and we have not such a big, the wind energy is a little bit not so good, but good. So that means we should be optimistic. But there are clouds in the air, and we have a lot of clouds, and things we have to discuss on this. One of the clouds is, of course, that there are still challenging tasks. One is the development of flexibility options in integrating renewable energy, which cannot be controlled. We need more storage capacities. And in particular, economists are well aware, our discipline is well aware to think about what are economically efficient and effective solutions in implementing and solving this kind of technology challenges. But there are more clouds, not only integration of renewables. I think you will talk about this integration of renewables. But we have more clouds, and I think we will discuss this also. And one of the clouds, Alessandro mentioned just in his speech before, that we are heavily depending on China concerning photovoltaics and renewable energy. And the Strait of Hormuz is now replaced by the Strait of Malacca. That is what I learned from this presentation. I think this is a challenge, and we have to think, and it is a strategic problem of energy security. But there are more strategic challenges. One is, of course, this war in Ukraine, which we don't see how it will end. The problem is this war not only destroys or interrupts energy flows in the world, but also creates a lot of costs. And of course, money will be more difficult to acquire if the military needs more resources. Then we had this COP29. I don't know, nobody from us on the podium was there, so we cannot directly report was this a success or a failure on the 50, but as far as I have heard, it was not really a good success, so many people are disappointed about this kind of things. And the third problem, or the fourth problem, the most important thing, and I think Fereidoon will talk about this, it is the re-election of Trump. And this is really a challenge for developing of renewable energy, because he's known not to be a fan of this. He is a fan of oil and gas technologies. So so that means it is a challenge for us. So that means we have large problems to discuss and not much time. So we will just introduce our speakers. Unfortunately, our first speaker is ill. Susanna, she will not be here. but our second speaker is Alberto Pasanini. He is from the director Director of Research, Development and Technology Innovation at Edison. And he is scouting innovative technologies for short, mid, and long-term business of his company. So that means he is on the ground. He is talking about this kind of challenge. I'm really interested to hear what he is saying. Then we have on screen Ionut Purica, professor from Hyperion University, member of the Academy of Romanian Scientists. He's Romanian, and he is a teacher and researcher on the sustainable development, and among other tasks, he implemented the IAEA message model in Romania, and he was advisor of the Romanian Prime Minister in nuclear safety. So again, interesting how to see this, his view. And our third and last speaker is Fereidoon Sioshansi. He's president for Menlo Economics, which is a consulting company, and he publishes books and a newspaper on Energy Informer. It's called, probably will say something about that. And he is, his home is San Francisco, California, and of course he will really is really at the forefront of the problem which we expect to see in the next year in US. Let me start with the first speaker, Alberto.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm honored to be here and a little bit impressed, I have to say. Well, as Georg was saying, I am on the field in my role of Director of Research, Development and Technological Innovation of an utility like Edison, which is active mostly in the Italian market. We are really, how can I say, the ones that will put, let's say, in practice all the strategic plans. We will build and we will exploit the assets that will make the energy transition happen. So this is a very how can I say, crucial topic. And I have to say that being in this moment at the head of R&D of an electricity company is very challenging and fascinating, because, we can say that there are at least two certainties in what will happen in the next decades. There are lots of uncertainties, some clouds, but also lots of sun. Let's say, and we have a very challenging goal, which is the carbon neutrality. We have some certainties, and one of these certainties is for me, but I'm taking words that I already heard from other specialists, is that today it is clear that to complete the energy transition, the carbon neutrality, we will need some technologies that are now still at a very early stage of development, on technical side, on economical side, or maybe on both. So it is clear that that the research and development and innovation has a big part in this game. The other certainty that I think we have, in my modest opinion, is that this goal cannot be achieved with one single technology. I think that we need a mix of technologies. We need to use the best available technologies in a systemic way, and without any, how can I say, of course we can be fan of a technology rather than another, but we have really to be very pragmatic and to adopt a principle of technology neutrality. I think that all available technologies are good, let's say. Of course, the one that can allow to decarbonize and to achieve the transition are good. And I was very happily surprised by the fact that in the Italian, let's say, PNIEC, which is the National Integrated Energy and Climate Plan, that was updated last summer in July, this principle is clearly stated. Of course, I think that one of the biggest part in decarbonizing the energy system will be done by the renewables, and we are, let's say, seeing growing trends in the development of renewables worldwide and in Italy too. But it is clear that the pace has to increase to achieve the goals. We can make very simply calculation. For instance, in Italy between 2021 and 2022, we had plus 2.5 gigawatt-hour per year. And if we want to achieve the objective of 2030, we have to double. Let's say we have to go to 6 gigawatt per year. So things are going in the renewable sectors, but we have to increase the pace. I'm very happy also to say that my company, which is a player in the Italian market of primary importance, is a company that by history has always invested a lot in the innovation. Maybe not everyone knows that the first thermoelectric power plant built in Italy was built by Edison company in more than 140 years ago. And I'm also pleased to say that it was in the center of Milano, very close to the Duomo. So it means that at that time, of course, the vision of technology was different. Maybe there was a more optimistic view, let's say. But these are very personal considerations. Let's move to the core of my talk. Just to give an idea of the commitment of Edison and the challenge on technologies that we have to face, and that I will be happy to contribute to. In his strategic plan, Edison by 2030 want to reach 5 gigawatt of installed renewable capacity, including wind, photovoltaics, and hydropower. Now we are around a little bit more than 2 gigawatts. So it means increasing, especially the photovoltaic capacity by 2 gigawatt. It is a lot. And of course, we have to face a world in which technology is going faster and faster. Wind, of course, we have now about 1 gigawatt of wind, and we want to maintain 1 gigawatt of hydropower. So most of the development of the renewable will be made by photovoltaics. Another point which is crucial when you talk about the renewables is storage. Because of course we cannot imagine all the best technologies and all innovation in the field, but if we consider solar, I would say obvious thing, when there is no sun, there is no generation. And so of course a system, an electric system with a great amount of solar and renewables in general, is a system that can work only if there is an amount of capacity, a significant amount of capacity of storage. And I think that among the technologies that has to be developed much more than are developed today are what the so-called long duration energy storage. We all know that a lithium-ion battery, that I think is one of the greatest inventions worldwide, because changed the life of, I think, all people in the planet, has a problem, of course, mature technology, but the duration, the optimal duration of discharge is fixed around 4 hours. So there are some other technologies that natively can guarantee a duration of discharges of 6, 8, 10 hours. We are looking at it. There are also some technologies that are very, very interesting, are the flow batteries. Not so new technology, but they can arrive, let's say, in a stage of maturity by both technical and economical viewpoint. These are particularly interesting because, to my knowledge, is the only technology of storage that can allow to separate, let's say, the two-dimension energy and power. So you can fix the energy and store, and then you can deploy a battery that will discharge in 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. This is the only technology that is able to do this. But I mean, if we talk about storage, Edison is also committed in very old technology, but made in a very innovative way, which is the pumped hydro. Pumped hydro storage is something that has to be rediscovered, I think, and rebuilt again. We are committed, and we are engaged in the construction. We are at the authorization and investment decision phase of two pumped stored hydro system in the southern Italy for a power of approximately 500 megawatt. And the innovation here is that we do not have to build two basins, but we already use we use one of two basins which is already existing. These basins were built, let's say, in the 50s and 60s for irrigation purposes, but now they are not used very much for this purpose, and so they can be reused for energy storage. So we only have to build one of the two reservoirs. Other two technologies that for me are very interesting and complementary with the development of the of renewables are, let's say, dispatchable technologies, but decarbonated, fully decarbonated. And there are two technologies that for me will be crucial. So one is carbon capture and storage. In the PNIEC, the strategic plan for energy transition in Italy, there is a long section which is dedicated to the carbon capture. And also because in Italy we will have a very important asset of storage that is built currently by ENI in the northern Adriatic Sea, and so this is really a chance for decarbonizing, let's say, the thermoelectric production. Now with current technologies we can arrive almost at 95% of capture, And this, of course, will not solve the problem of the energy transition, but it will help, let's say. Of course, we cannot make, let's say, by in one day, overnight, a system with 100% of renewables. But if we have a part of dispatchable energy in the system, we can optimize investment, and we will go in a more, let's say, sustainable way also by an economical viewpoint. And another technology, which is now, let's say, technology very discussed in this moment in Italy, is nuclear. Edison is engaged in the public debate, let's say, with other companies and universities to reopen, let's say, the debate of nuclear energy in Italy. Now technologies are very different from the technologies, let's say, of the 80s and the 90s. We have in particular the small modular reactor technology, which will come up to a maturity stage, let's say, after 2030. And so a part of dispatchable production made, for instance, by nuclear and a thermal power plant with a complete carbon capture will help the system. According to a strategic study that was made internally by our strategy department, the saving on investment can be 100 billion euros for the Italian system, just with 10% of nuclear and 10% of thermal plus CCS. We firmly believe in it. It is in our strategic plan. We also stated this as an ambition by 2040, if conditions are met. Let's say if there is a regulation in Italy that authorizes the building of nuclear power plant, we also committed to build two a small modular reactor of approximately 300 megawatt electric that can be a very important asset, not only for the energy system, but also for the industry, because as you know, these new reactors are also capable to provide steam and energy, not only under the form of electricity, but also heat for industrial uses. Of course, what will be interesting in this path is to also look at the innovation, but let's say we have to consider multiple viewpoints. And of course, the maturity, the reliability of the technology we want to use, the cost, the efficiency, and there is one which is emerging more and more, and it is part of the title of the panel, which is also the critical raw material aspects, because what the story of the last 2, 3, 4 years learned to us is that we have to take care about dependencies. We don't have to be dependent too much, let's say. Of course, we will be always reasonably dependent from a supply chain, from a given country, but we have to take care to concentrate all the dependency we have in few countries or in few geographical zones. By the viewpoint of Edison, of course we look at critical raw materials. So, but as we are not developer of technologies, but user of technologies, we consider, let's say, in the same scope, even if it is a little bit different, also the reliability of the supply chains. Because of course we have to be aware and take care of possible dependency on raw material, but also on manufactured assets. And if we consider also the assets that are fundamental for the energy transition, PV panel, component partly of wind turbine, charger for electric vehicle, lithium-ion battery. We can see that, and electrolyzer also. We can see that most of the production of this asset is concentrated in China or in very few geographical zones of the country. So we have to diversify. I was talking about nuclear. So according to European Union, for instance, more than 95% of materials and components that are used in nuclear industry present very low risk in terms of dependency. So this is something that we have to take care. Other 2 or 3 points that we consider, for instance, in our R&D studies and let's say the recommendation that we do to our business units. There are some technologies of electrolyzer that do not require the use of very rare material, and one of these family is the anionic exchange membrane, which, by the way, it's also an Italian technology, Italian and German technology. And this is also something that we have to take care when we imagine to deploy electrolyzer. Batteries, of course, we consider lithium-ion battery. They are mostly made in China. There is a risk of dependency. There are other families of batteries which are, in addition, for long duration storage. The redox flow battery can be now made with organic material that can be done by the European chemistry industry. Zinc bromium batteries can be made with raw material that are fully available, let's say, also in Europe. So to end on the topic of critical raw material, I think that one of the leverage we have to work on, in particular, maybe my viewpoint of R&D director is a little bit biased, is the technology. Is the technologies that do not use lot of this material because they exist. Please stop me because I can talk for hours and hours if you don't stop me.
Thank you very much for this overview about your technical portfolio. I will turn. We have not so much time for discussion, though. I will turn directly to Ionut. There's Stonehenge behind you. You are in Great Britain, or?
Thank you for the invitation made by the organizers and the university to allow me to address such a learned audience. First, I have to say that I am an ex-ENEA and ICTP Trieste, and I have been working in ENEA for a few years. The idea is that we are now in a position regarding security, and I have to put my hat of a former member of the advisory group for energy of the European Commission. participating in the energy security strategy. We are in a position where the various fluxes of energy are actually changing in the world. Russian gas is not coming any longer to Germany, at least not at the same quantities. America has become an exporter of gas and oil, which was unimaginable about 10, 15 years ago. And this is due to new technologies. And I'm glad that Alberto Pasanisi has raised the problem of new technologies. We, instead of saying we renounce coal, for example, because it is pollutant, it is a question of we should develop new technologies, clean coal technologies that would actually substitute the present day technologies for using coal. We cannot renounce any type of energy production, energy generation technology, because that is what is giving security to our energy systems. In terms of Romania, for example, we have, if you go on transelectrica.ro, you will find that the distribution of energy generation is very evenly distributed. In between, we have hydro on the Danube and lake and Cascades. We have also the possibility to use hydrocarbons. Romania still got gas and heavy fuel oil. We have nuclear, 2 units in operation, 2 CANDU units based on our reserves of uranium, and we are making the manufacturing the fuel also. We have a full fuel cycle in nuclear. And also a lot of wind and photovoltaics recently. I mean, in the last 10 years, something. Why I have to say is that there is an idea about renewable energy, and sometimes the decision makers are going on fashion. This year we have blue ties and we should develop photovoltaic parks. Next year red ties and wind parks and so on. My feeling is that we have to have an integrated view on the strategy, and this is what sustainability is about, also applied to energy in this case. That would actually develop and understand exactly how the various technologies should be implemented. On one side, we have implemented the message model for energy system of the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, and we are making various type of scenarios. One of the calculations that we've been making based on big data bases that we have, for example, the flow of the Danube, we have data starting 1845. Other data on precipitations, that mean influence on lakes and cascade hydropower plants. Other data on wind in the various regions where wind parks have been built, and solar. The idea is that putting those distribution and getting one standard deviation down gives a good idea, a good estimation on how much reserve of energy one needs. And we arrived at something like 700 megawatts up to 1,000 megawatts for the Romanian system. The idea is that obviously we have to think, as it was already said, to put reserve, to put storage, to put various technologies into the system. Not talking about the grid, obviously there is a critical infrastructure directive of the European Union, and we are in a position to also supply now energy to Moldova, to Ukraine, and that is something that is another type of contribution of Romania to what is happening east of our borders. And one other thing is the fact that nuclear program, and I am now coming to actually my field of activity. The nuclear program is developing. Recently in Baku in COP29, we signed an agreement for financing the development of 2 more units in Cernavoda nuclear power plant, and also involving Ansaldo, by the way, and some Canadian and American companies. And also we are developing, in terms of research and small modular reactors, 2 lines of activity. One of them is building a nuclear power station based on small modular reactors developed by NuScale in the States, that was already approved as a project as a typical type of project in the States by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And the other one is research done together with ENEA and other entities in a consortium with our Nuclear Research Institute, research on a lead-cooled fast breeder reactor that is called Alfred. I'm not giving you now the acronym source, but the idea is that that reactor is important to Romania, because the fuel, the waste, so-called waste fuel, that is actually has passed through the reactors, through the CANDU reactors, still contains a lot of uranium-238 that can be used to convert to plutonium-239 and fission, continue to be used as a generator of power in a fast breeder reactor. So we are in a position to have a wide spectrum development of energy solutions. Obviously, wind parks are developing there. We have actually, one of the problems that we have is that in the region of Romania, Dobrogea, that is close to the Black Sea, we have both 2 nuclear units and a lot of wind parks. That means that we need now to enhance the extraction of power from that region, so grid. One other thing that I wanted to say related to security, energy security, is the fact that, for example, I'm a member of a group of the Advisory Council of European universities that is doing now a report on energy security, supply security, and it will be ready and launched in April next year. One other thing is the fact that up till 80 years now, we have been educated that the market solves everything, and talking about price security and market security, we should let the market function because it's absorbing shocks, it has resilience. Yes, that happens very nicely in peace conditions. we are no longer in a status of peace conditions, because clearly there is a very complex type of conflict going on in Europe right now, and it is clear that market can be used against the power systems and the economies. So it is a question of understanding better the market and acting such that to increase security of the power sector from the system point of view, from the market commercial point of view. And finally, I want to again put my hat of a former project officer for energy and infrastructure and climate change in the World Bank. I've been working on there for a few years and discuss financing. If we want to develop energy systems, if we want to implement new technologies, it is very clear that we need new financial structures that would actually accelerate the possibility and be in a position to be set up, to be arranged in terms of financing in a shorter amount of time, such that the energy solutions, energy technologies would penetrate faster and would actually not impinge on the affordability of the power of energy. And finally, I'm just mentioning the trilemma index of energy of the World Energy Council. I've been involved in developing energy scenarios there, which is actually considering not only one parameter, and I will have something to say on that, on emissions as the only parameter. It's considering security of energy, environmental protection of energy, and affordability of energy. And all this is actually creating a space where if you want to make more investment in security, then you have less affordability. Maybe more security means more coal in order to compensate for the volatile renewables, and that is something that impinges on climate protection, on environmental protection, and so on. One of the things, and allow me to end my presentation, I have been publishing a book in July in Elsevier in the States on climate change and circular economics, and we need solutions related to developing technologies that are actually transforming the present day waste into resources for tomorrow, such that we have a circular economics and we can protect the environment much better by considering complex indicators, integrated indicators, than by assuming that we will only take decisions on only one indicator, which is emissions. Emissions can be an indicator, but it's not the only one, definitely, especially in this situation of geostrategic development of resources for energy, of supply chains for energy technologies, and of other elements that are not simple to consider. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Time is running out, so I will go just to Fereidoon to ask for his remarks.
Thank you very much. Okay, there we go. Is this better? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending, the association for the invitation. And I recognize that I'm between you and the cocktails, so I will try to deliver my message and a few slides that I've prepared. Not very many, but just so I remember what it is that I wanted to share with you. I decided to, if I can make the advance, there you go. You know, a year or two ago, there was a movie by this strange title, and I decided this is a good metaphor for the energy transition that we're going through, everything, everywhere, all at once, which is what we need to do to make the transition in time. And for those of you who have not seen the movie, it's actually not a particularly good movie, if I can... there we go. So the plot of the movie is pretty simple. The heroine of the movie has to change the multiverse to save the world from an evil source or something like that. I saw the movie, it didn't make any sense to me, but nevertheless, it's a good metaphor. I think the energy transition that people at this conference and elsewhere are talking about very much has to do with the same issue. We have an evil. The evil, in my view, is the fossil fuels that are emitting so much carbon in the atmosphere. And unfortunately, they are supported by very powerful forces, not just the fossil fuel companies, but many politicians who are their fans and supporters and vice versa. Just as an example, the G20 countries in 2022 subsidized fossil fuel industries in just those 20 economies at the tune of $1.1 trillion. So this is obscene. We are helping the industry that we're trying to replace, and so forth and so on. So it's a bit of a context to think about. So the solution, at least on paper, if I can move to the next slide, is that at least on paper, the solution is fairly easy, and I've been thinking about it and have a book coming out next year that pretty much is focused on this. I think simply put, we have to do two things. We have to convert things that can be converted to electricity so that we don't use fossil fuels, and then we have to make sure that the extra demand can be met from low carbon, sources of electricity, renewables and so forth, and I think the previous speakers talked about that. So on paper, this is fairly trivial, and one that is beginning to happen. But it's not an easy task by any stretch of imagination. I looked at some numbers from United Nations. It just came out at the time that the Baku conference was convening. I think the data for 2023 shows where the global emissions of greenhouse gases can be in a broad sense categorized. And you can see the biggest source, of course, is energy related, but then there are others listed. And so to do the two things that I mentioned, we need to focus on the big ticket items. The first big item is electricity generation. That's the single biggest source of global carbon emissions, according to the United Nations. So obviously, we know how to do that. We reduce fossil fuels, we convert more electricity generation to renewables. So that takes care of 26% of global emissions. Another big item, 15% or so, is transportation. 11% of the 15% is road transport, which can be electrified with known technology. And then you go down things like buildings, heating, cooling, a lot of industrial uses of fossil fuels can all be electrified as well. There are some areas where they're difficult to do. There are some industrial processes, there's some agricultural processes, and so forth. They're harder to electrify, but you know, we can start with the low-hanging fruit and move to the more difficult ones as technology evolves. The next slide shows the challenge of converting primary fuels to useful energy. You've probably seen these charts. This is from, this is so-called energy flow in the United States. And there are a lot of numbers. The units are quads, quadrillion, BTUs. Don't pay attention to the outdated units. But what is important is to notice what goes in on one end and what comes out as useful energy at the other end. And the sad story is that quite a bit of the primary energy doesn't end up as useful energy at the other end. At the previous number, 93.6 quads of primary energy in the US enter, but only 32 quads come out as useful energy. So that's a conversion efficiency of about 34%. So we lose something like 61 quads of primary energy in the transformation process of the fossil fuel dominated economy. I mean, that is really pretty bad number, right? And why do we lose so much? Well, it's combustion. When you combust fuels to generate electricity, you get about a third of the useful energy. And the gentleman from Edison probably knows this. In most, thermal power plants, even though more efficient ones, a lot of energy is lost in the transmission, in the transformation. The same with combustion engine cars. Most of the energy that we put in carbon in the tank ends up as heat and has to be get rid of. That's why you have all the fans and the water system and everything, because you have to get you have to get rid of a lot of heat. So combustion basically means waste, a lot of waste. By electrifying things, you can reduce quite a bit of that energy. And the other number, which hopefully everybody will remember, is this number, 82.5%. This is today's dependence. I think the gentleman from IEA also mentioned at the global level, we're sort of at that same level. So 82.5% of our energy is, in the US at least, is fossil fuel based. So we need to think about replacing that with something that is not so carbon intensive. I have spent most of my career working on the electric power sector, so I focus on that. And this simple picture shows the way, once upon a time, this is what we did. We used energy, primary energy, mostly thermal at one time. Now it's mostly, hopefully, going to be renewables, where we turn it into electricity, then we transmit it, then we distribute it, and customers at the end use the energy as useful energy services. But this picture is pretty outdated, I believe. And we can get rid of, obviously, we can get rid of thermal generation by using mostly renewables, as this particular slide shows. But we can also get rid of a lot of transmission and distribution by putting power plants on the roof of customers' premises, as shown on this slide. US has 1 million storage facilities of one size or another, 1 million of them. So if we cover the roof of those, the flat roofs of those buildings, we can generate a lot of power right where it's used and utilized. So you can generate power exactly where it's used, most of it, not all of it, when it's used. And with storage and flexible demand, there's a lot that we can do with these kinds of innovations. We can do this at small customer level. This is obviously an advertisement from Tesla, but basically you can generate power on the roof. There's a battery on the driveway and the car is electric. So you're not only electrifying the use within the house, but the transport is also electrified. And maybe some of that is using the energy from the roof. So every little house or large house or factory can essentially be turned into a smart microgrid, if you will. You generate, you store, and you consume, and you can share with your neighbors and things like that. So there's a lot that we can do with this kind of technology. I have some data from a neighbor who converted his house to, a solar house and with batteries and so forth. And he's been keeping data for the last 4 years. And these are the actual numbers. Over the 4 years, his consumption averages 11,000 kilowatt hours. His solar panels generate about 10,000 of that. So his purchase from the system, from the utility, went from 11,125 to 840. So this is an example of what I call prosumager. It's a consumer that produces and stores power, and we can reduce our dependence on the utility system. So again, being mindful of the time, I think there's a lot we can do to turn individual customers into generators. We can turn large, this is the headquarters of Apple. The building generates most of its power most of the time and has generation and storage underground. In California, where I live, there is a law that was passed several years ago that all new residential buildings have to be net zero energy. So buildings cannot be sold unless they have solar panels and energy efficiency and other features already in the building. So the electric power system that I showed you, that picture that I showed you earlier, has to be transformed. So the energy transition, a lot of it depends on electricity doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And so I think we are, as we transition, we are really changing into a new era, just as the telephone industry rediscovered or changed and transformed to what was become wireless. I think the electric power sector also has to reinvent itself all along its value chain, from generation to transmission to distribution and consumption. So with that, I will stop, and I think we're at 5 o'clock right now.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have 5 o'clock, so there's no time for discussion, and our presentations had been very diverse, so that it is difficult to wrap up the discussion. I think there had been good ideas, interesting ideas. I myself would give a following result. Of course, in Europe, we are very afraid about Trump and the future government, but we should think 3 things which could help Europe. One is the US will certainly help export LNG to Europe, so that means we have some backup from the Russian gas, which will not come to Europe in the next years. Then what is also good, markets will probably help to make these challenges which we have not solved, storage and intelligent management of electrical systems, the markets will be able to develop these technologies in a more efficient way and in a more cost-efficient way than governments and political planning. So I think we should hope, or that means my personal hope is that with Trump in power, he will put some efforts in this direction. And of course, one element in this is, nobody talked about this today, it's artificial intelligence. We probably need not only hardware, we need software in order to reduce the cost. That is our next challenge. The next step of the energy transition means that we must reduce the cost of transmission lines, of storage capacities, etc., etc. And one element is probably artificial intelligence. With this, I will close this session, and I hope we will meet us in the reception on the other side of the street. Thank you very much.